Hey, who'd you talk to? What's going on? It is me. It is Mike Lepre, King Mike L for Legit Paranormal. It is July 25th. It's 7 o'clock on a Sunday. This has been a long weekend for an old guy. Let me put it to you that way. Like, my legs hurt just from going up and down the stairs. Like, I'm at that point where I'm just, when I think of old guys, I don't think of genius, Kev. What's up, Kev?
Hey, what's going on, King? How you doing?
I'm complainy. I'm a little complainy, a little grouchy, as my wife would say. So just bear with that. I'm like sleep deprived. I feel like I just been like going for days.
Yeah. You're right. We're at the age you can't go 3 hours of sleep. You can't do it. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. It's like your chest starts to hurt, your soul hurts. Like your soul like gets sad because it just wants to lay down like on the couch. And when I think about laying down on the couch, I bring in Buddy there. Buddy, what's going on, pal?
I'm doing fantastic. I had a lovely evening last night, and if I didn't enjoy the sound of your pissing and moaning all night last night, Mike, I got to hear it again today when I listened to the audio evidence. So it was kind of good. I'm doing good.
Did I get any jokes off?
You got a lot of jokes off. You got no paranormal laughter or anything. There was actually a point where somebody thought they heard a giggle, but it was just crickets to it. I'm sorry. And I'm getting through the day with my longest days. It's made by Shades On. Oh, there we go. Shades On. It's a lovely brewery out of West Greenwich, West Kingston, Rhode Island, down there somewhere. And they make lovely beers. And this is their lovely double IPA.
Kev, did you ever think that so many beers were made out of Rhode Island?
No, not every time he says a new one, I can't. I don't know where they're fitting all the breweries. I don't know where they are.
Everywhere. They're taking over. There's one in the south side of Providence. It's beautiful.
All right. So before I bring on our guest Keith Johnson, I want to bring in someone that was on a show before. He's going to sit in with us. We'll do like a panel. Let's bring in Ron Murphy. Ron, how are you tonight?
Hey, Ron.
I can't hear you. Your mic's off.
You're muted.
All right, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
So I'm doing what the kids are doing nowadays. They have a headset on, see how this works out.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to see how this goes. I'm going to try technology out for a while.
The first set of shows I did, I used that exact same thing, like a gamer headset.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
It was fun to do because you can hear it as you move and stuff. I could actually get up. All right.
Yes.
Bringing in our guest, Buddy. I'll bring him in. I'll let you do the introduction.
Oh boy, Keith Johnson. He's been an investigator for Christ, like over 50 years. Has his own TV show, Ghosts and Near. I was happy to be a guest on it a few years ago. He's an author. He's a demonologist. He's an investigator. He's one half of the Johnson twins. Keith Johnson.
How are you?
Hello.
Welcome, Keith.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction and nice welcome. It's great to see you all. You're all looking great. I mean, maybe we're all a little sleep deprived, but I think you're all looking fantastic. So
let me ask you a question, Keith. Were you offended by the way Buddy had to emphasize the 50 years type thing? Like, did he have to say it like that? He loves it, like, because we're older than he is. He's always throwing us under the bus. Like, was a little too excited when he said 50.
It does make me 50 plus years old, but yeah, sure. I've been around a while. I have been around a while.
That's a good thing. That's actually a good thing.
You know what I'm talking about.
Here's what I wanted to know. This is what I wanted to start off with, and I really want to know this. So you believe in things other than ghosts, like a step further than a ghost, right? Is that something that you're all right? Because we had the question of an elemental being on the ship last night. And that just danced in my head for a long time, and I couldn't quite I couldn't figure out what it was. Like, he kept saying it doesn't take a shape, and that's like things that don't take shape are hard for me. Like, it's hard for me because my brain doesn't work like that. I need a shape. So an elemental, does it ever usually take the same form, or are they just like, again, any form?
A lot of times, they have. A lot of times they have no definite form. A lot of times you don't see them, and when you do see them, they're very wispy, and they don't tend to hang around for a while. They're not too long. You see them, and then they're not there, and they're kind of sometimes like a puff of smoke. No definite form. sometimes they take a little like serpentine appearance, but they don't last long, and they tend to appear in corners, and very, very difficult to catch on film and video, although there are times when they are caught. And so that's when you get some actual evidence of elementals.
Oh.
And they're believed to be non-human spirits. They're not human spirits. They're not.
All right. Yeah, and that's, I guess, the term that I really wanted to ask you about. So an inhuman spirit, right, is... I know that sounds dumb, a dumb question. It's not human, but what?
Right.
What is it?
Well, an inhuman spirit is something that has a spirit form that has never walked the earth in human form, at least humanity that we know it. And of course, that comprises elementals, demons, angels, and what have you. They're considered that they're not the spirits of departed people, in other words, and they don't act like spirits, like with intelligence, although they can come and go and be very, very mischievous. And of course, the demonic spirits are very, very high above them. Some people consider the elementals to be lower demonic spirits, but they're not. They work for higher spirits. Usually they're in tandem with something that's more intelligent and is pulling the strings from the background. And of course, the native population in this country had a very firm belief in elemental spirits going back many, many centuries before the European settlers ever arrived here. So it's been in our lore for quite a while. And of course, I do believe they exist. There is a lot of there's some proof of them, and a lot of people swear that they have had experience with elemental spirits.
Wow. Kev?
No, I guess that whole sort of inhuman spirit versus human spirit was something I definitely wanted to dig in a little bit, because we've had a lot of people on the show, and it seemed like, I would say, the majority thought that, or the majority seemed to portray the idea that most spirits, most hauntings are human. And from what I've kind of read from your what I've read on your site and some of your interviews and stuff, you almost seem to kind of flip it a little bit, where it seems like your thoughts are that there are more inhuman spirits than human spirits, especially when there's something malevolent going on. Can you maybe talk about that balance and kind of how you see it all fitting together?
I've found in my personal experience, my belief system and my personal experience, that a lot of so-called human spirits are actually not human spirits at all. It's rather deception. And I know there's a great belief that when somebody passes suddenly, they're kind of stuck in between worlds, and like a lot of children. When I, of course, at Slater Mill, which my brother and I have been there for many years, there's a lot of belief that there's children that worked in the mill and they died from accidents, and they're kind of stuck there, and they don't know enough to move on. My belief, the way they react to certain verbal statements and certain objects, is that they're not really the spirits of children. They're actually putting on a masquerade and to deceive people. Mostly a deception, and that's my personal experience and my personal belief and opinion too. I think, and Sandra and I both agree that disembodied human spirits is really not a natural state, at all. And of course, there are crisis apparitions where somebody passed on or even living will suddenly appear to somebody and warn them. And if it's a living person, sometimes the person themselves will have no knowledge of this, but somehow they seem to appear and warn friends and relatives of impending danger. And there's also the transition apparition, so to speak. It's when somebody has passed on, and this is usually within a year of their passing, usually like a 3-month to a year-long period, where somebody will keep getting signs from that person, and that simply seems to be the person saying, "Look, I'm with my creator now. I've passed on. I'm well, and I'm waiting for you, and I'm watching over you and hoping you do well, and we'll meet on the other side. And that seems to be the general message. A lot of people receive messages like feathers come out of nowhere, pennies. Usually if it's children, you'll get pennies, but dragonflies and things like that. Yeah, birds, exactly. Birds, all sorts of birds, doves and whatnot. But yes, birds do seem to bring signs for us that our loved ones are at peace, and they're really not gone. They're really just in another state, and we will meet them again someday. I firmly believe that.
I'm gonna jump in on this. I had a really weird experience with a bird. My dad used to hate this blue jay that would fly in the yard. It's just like a blue jay. I mean, he hated it, like, because it was ruining everything we had out there. And my dad was like an old school Italian, so he was out there with like a net and a bat. He wanted to just kill this bird. He was done with it, right? So the bird disappeared for a long time. I thought my dad killed it. Like, that's how I figured out what happened. I didn't see the bird for like years. My dad passed literally the day that he passed. I was in the yard and a blue jay came and landed like 3 or 4 feet from me, and I went, "No way! Like, get out of here!" And then it flew away, and I was like, "All right, like, you know what I mean? All right." I felt like, "All right, you're showing off. We're done with that. Let's move on." But it was weird. It was a weird feeling for me because, like, who freaking expected the blue jay to come out of nowhere and land on the picnic table? God damn.
Yeah, they don't usually do that. They're usually very shy of people. They tend to stay away, and they screech a lot. And I was just a little while ago hearing one outside. I haven't heard one for a while, so I did take notice of that about 45 minutes ago. I noticed a blue jay screeching outside, and maybe it was sending a message from you that I was going to be speaking with you, and yeah, he's right.
You see, Buddy's up there laughing, and it's because we went on the USS Salem last night, and he had a million recorders set up. And I know he knows that he heard some things said, and I keep feeling like it's going to end up being like about me, and he just doesn't want to tell me yet because he doesn't want me to be nervous. That's the feeling I had the whole time I was walking through that ship, was that something was that I was just in an area where other things were, and I was like being respectful, but I wasn't like, I was so calm. It was ridiculous. I thought I was going to be scared because that's how I am. Like, I don't want to ever see a ghost. Like, I really don't. Like, I went there in my head. I was like, if it happens, it happens. Whatever. I'm just going to stay even. I'll be good. But like that whole day, my wife's like, would you just calm down and toughen up? I was like nervous. You know what I mean? I really was. But and when I got there, I was just calm as all hell. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, I don't know what's going on around me, but maybe Buddy will have more information. Buddy, what thoughts?
Yeah, going back to what you were saying about like a demon taking the form of something else to try and masquerade, to try and fool us like a child. When we arrived at the Salem, Don DeCristofaro, fantastic, awesome Don. Thank you for the experience. He gave us a good tour, and he gave us like their experiences because he's been investigating there for 30 years and he's been volunteering there. And other people that come in, a lot of people that we've talked to over the years talk about this little girl Lucy, who's very active on the ship. Now, last night, today, I listened to some of my recordings from last night, and I do have a high-pitched voice. It sounds like a little girl. I took the route of, they thought that, Don says to us before we get investigating that this spirit, this Lucy, they think it might actually not be a child, where it's in fact maybe a negative spirit trying to pretend it's a child for whatever reason. All right, so I took that route. And I antagonized, I'm like, is it Lucy or is it somebody that wants to be a little girl and wants to wear little dresses and wants to put little bows in their hair and all that stuff? I still got the 3 or 4 times a small child's voice, or what sounds like a small child's voice. And then I got men, I got what sounds like a raspy woman, on and on and on. But would it be a negative spirit? What would a little girl be doing on a battleship? Is my first thought, right? But right. I don't know. What do you think?
Unless it was the Titanic or something, you wouldn't think that.
That was a great comeback. That was a good one. Killed you, buddy. Killed you. Unless it's the Titanic there, big guy. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Keith.
No, just thinking that was never really used as a passenger ship, right?
No, it was the flagship.
Pretty much a battleship.
It was in service from 1949 to 1959. It was never really a war vessel at all. It was just like the flagship where the admirals rode on, you know?
Yeah, but there's 1,500 people in there, and that's like I was walking around with 10 people, and I was claustrophobic. Kev, you agree with me?
No, it was
horrible. Going down those straight stairs. Oh my god, I couldn't imagine.
And I'm the shortest out of the three of us, and I'm 6 feet. And I was banging into stuff, just not paying attention. Buddy gets stuck banging his head, banging his. Kev, did you walk into anything, or you just because you're the genius you didn't?
When I was backing down one set of stairs, it took one in the back of the head. Yeah, it's tight.
It's just not built for people that are somewhat tall. It's really everything's really low. And then there's a dentist and a whatnot. All right, but let's get off that.
But hold on.
Yeah, let me ask you something, Mr. Johnson. I do have a question for you. Now, the times that I've investigated places where the spirit of a child is something that's predominant, I found, oddly enough, that this was not the abode or the dwelling place of a child, like adult mental hospitals, for instance, or prisons. What I found in my research is that whenever a child shows itself or manifests itself, it is actually something quite malevolent, trying to appear benign to lure people in or what have you, and I'm sure there are cases where there are legitimate hauntings by children, but I think the idea, whenever we're dealing with something like a battleship, the presence that is there that is trying to counterfeit the look of a child is doing it to bring people closer to them instead of turning them away as if they are being lured in by something. And that being said, and tell me if you agree with this or not, but also in my investigations, I found out that these kind of spirits that are counterfeiting can never quite duplicate the form completely. There's always something off. Like sometimes the spirit doesn't have a mouth or doesn't have any eyes. There's something missing to hint that it's not human, Yes.
That's very frequent. Yes. Yeah, I do agree with that. A lot of spirits that are in fact non-human seem to have trouble completely replicating the human form. I'm sure there are exceptions, but quite often, especially in spirit photography, you'll get a full-bodied apparition, but maybe not a full-faced apparition, and just something seems to be off and wrong. And quite often the eyes are missing. And I think that's intentional because the eyes are the mirror of the soul. And I really think that if it is like an inhuman spirit, a malevolent spirit, they're kind of wary of appearing as a full-faced apparition because then you get to see into them. That kind of gives you power over them as well. And I think they're very, very wary of that. And that's why in cases of demonic possession, if you will, quite often the possessed individual, if it's a legitimate case, which, is rather rare, but often the eyes will roll up, exposing the whites, or the eyes will become very narrow. They'll be very squinty and serpentine, or they'll be rolling around, anything to prevent direct eye contact for any length of time.
Oh,
that strikes the chord. So are we saying that obviously there shouldn't have been a little girl on that ship? So if if there's somebody there, then that's something that's either non-human, or could that be an evil person who passes on and tries to choose that form? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, where do we draw the line on that? Of what it is? Like, it's not a person, but what if it's a really evil person like that dies on the ship? In other words, can he manifest himself as something different than what he is, or no?
Well, it would have to be a very, very powerful spirit. So I would tend to think it's an inhuman spirit posing and just doing a masquerade. That's what I say. And as far as an evil spirit, an evil human spirit, there doesn't seem to be a lot of indication of that it's actually a human spirit. I know a lot of times in in the Conjuring movie, of course. It's supposed to be a woman that was an evil satanic witch, and she came back as a demon, whereas actually most of these spirits never walked the earth in human form, as we know humanity today, anyway. So I would tend to think it's a deception.
I like the terms that you use too, like masquerading. Now, whenever you said about the idea of an elemental being aboard, now that's whenever you get into the terms like glamour, that it's trying to put on a false face, if you will. So in your research, Mr. Johnson, how do you separate the elemental from the demonic, or how do you separate the elemental from all other things?
That's sometimes very difficult to do. It because an elemental won't seemingly have a lot of power. It'll be mischievous, show up here and there, but it doesn't really seem to have a lot of power. And if it's something that's again, if it's a haunting and the haunting is getting more and more severe, then I would say it's working in tandem with other spirits. Something's pulling the cords and directing that spirit to do this, show up here, show up there. There's an intelligence behind it. For example, we were in Pennsylvania once for a convention years ago, and we were in this nice little bed and breakfast called the Yellow House in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And there was an historical cemetery we didn't even know about behind a meeting house out and back. And we were getting ready to leave, and we're just having our morning. Sandra was making our morning coffee. And all of a sudden she looked outside in the porch, and there's this black little form just hopping around like that. And this is, bright morning, and, birds are chirping and everything. But this black little cloudy form is bouncing around like that. And it kind of like the bouncing ball, but then it bounced in back and went in back of that small meeting house. Later on, we came back and saw there was a cemetery there that we didn't know about, a historical cemetery. And that had been used as, that little house had been used as a Masonic hall. It had been used as a townhouse, a church at one time. Weddings had been performed there, funerals. So quite a history there. But it's the feeling that was very strange that it gave Sandra. She felt like a tingling in her lower body. It was just almost like an electric shock. I guess it really, was more disturbing than frightening to her. But that's something, an elemental, and I think it was being maybe not a harbinger. It wasn't predicting something, but it was kind of delivering a message. See me, I'm the bouncing ball. Now come back here, see where I've come from. And it did seem to come from that little meeting house in the cemetery in back of it. Otherwise, we have never gone in back of it and seen that cemetery there.
So you don't follow something in, is what we're saying. I know that sounds dumb again, but if you see something, hear something, it's not good to go forward. I'm being dead serious.
Well, yeah, I would only go forward if obviously, a lot of times we're doing this and we're doing it as an intervention for people and families in need. But just a regular investigation, or if you see something, I wouldn't want to. I don't know. A lot of people would want to go charging right after it, but for the evidence, and but I would make sure. Yeah, I would make sure I was very. I know all you guys would just charge in. Buddy would lead you, and you just go charging right after this.
No charge
apparition. We're gonna find out. But
you got the wrong guy, Keith. I got to be honest. I wish that we were that cool. But let me tell you something. They would run, and I would get so scared. This is my theory. I run towards something because I just want to confront it and make sure that I deal with it. And plus, if I'm gonna die, I don't mind going out that way. Like that was my Bigfoot theory when I went to that convention. Like I'm too scared to turn and run, so I would run forward like and then I probably die that way, which I'm cool with. But they would turn and run. We're running first type people. Like I scare very easy. But on this ship, for some reason, I felt like when I would focus my eyes and stare, I felt better. I felt like for some reason, if I locked on to things and just looked around and took it in, I felt more at ease. And I know that could have been my mind playing tricks on me.
To speak about last night and Mike's courage. In all fairness, his wife was leading us around everywhere we went, so we just kind of followed her. She had the flashlight, but she also had the balls to go walk in into all these rooms, and we just followed her.
Buddy, I'm offended. You know why I'm offended?
What's that?
Because she always leads the way. What are you talking about? That's
all
how
right.
it
Well,
works.
see, this is my first experience with her, Mike. So
19 years of marriage, buddy. You just let her lead. It's much easier to let her lead. It's better to make people. You know, the Queen of England has really no power. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
You got to prop them up. Yeah, you got it all. You're the figurehead. Woo! And I stay in the back, bud.
Right. Like last night, I was telling on cameras. I'll admit it. I get spooked. I waited for Charles to come with me, or waited for somebody else. Hey, you're going down that way. Hey, let's run some lines or something together. Because in standing in those hallways, you definitely feel like something's like right on top of you, like something's like right there looking at you.
Oh yeah. Like you said, it's so claustrophobic. You know, it's just and it's one of those things where your mind's on the alert because you could just turn a corner and see something. It's almost like setting you up for that kind of situation. Just the atmosphere itself.
Right.
Hey, Ron.
Yes,
Before you talk, you sound like a pit guy. That's what I figured out, and it sounds so great. You have such a great sound coming from this microphone. It's like I want you to go like you only got 2 more laps to go. You might want to pull in for a time. Yeah, it's perfect. It's got a great sound. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
No. I appreciate that, but no, I think Mr. Johnson made a great point. So, do you think these spirits are attracted to these places because of the fear element that's being produced in the individuals that are doing the investigation, or what is allowing that that window of opportunity, or that portal, for lack of a better word, to allow these things into our dimension or into our realm of being?
Well, into our dimension is actually very accurate. I think that there's a place like that's why a lot of cemeteries are haunted, because it looks like a foreboding atmosphere, and plus a lot of these haunted locations, because it looks creepy, people have gone in and said, wow, I bet this place is haunted, and it's giving it recognition.
Yes.
And of course, and then all it takes is one group to come in and they've read the Satanic Bible or something, and or just 1 or 2 books and everything, and then suddenly they're conjurers, and they're going to go in, and usually very young, like teenagers, they'll go in and they'll try to summon something. It is not that difficult to summon one of these spirits, especially a malevolent spirit. They're opportunists, very much opportunists. So to answer your question, I think it is because they are opportunists that they will pick these locations. They will hang around in these so-called spooky locations. And of course, if there's negative energy, they're going to feed on that. Somehow they're able to feed on negative energy. And if somebody's frightened, they'll feed on that. Sorrow, especially if somebody's grieving. I mean, of course, I believe it was H.P. Lovecraft said that fear is the greatest emotion, the strongest emotion. But my friend and author David Manch actually disagreed with that. He thinks that grief is a stronger emotion because it's more prolonged, it's more deep, and it goes through stages. So I think spirits can feed off that too. It just boggles my mind how they can actually feed off negative energy like nutrition to them, but it does seem to empower them and make them stronger. Even though they don't take in, they sometimes will use the elements to manifest, but their actual nourishment is all energy, and a lot of times it's negative energy.
Well, we feed off people, right?
Yeah, good point.
Is it fair to say we're the flip side of them? If they're non-human, we're human, and we feed off positivity. Plants feed off positivity, like living things.
Yeah, right. Photosynthesis and things like that. Sure. And
is that an invert? Like, is that like an opposite? Is that like negative, positive? Like, you know what I mean? The two sides of everything?
I think the extreme in negative positive is angels and demons. They're the exact opposite, of course. But we tend to feed off the positive. Mostly, most people do tend to feed off the positive. I mean, of course, there's a lot of negative people out there, but we all want something good to happen, and we all want something good to happen to our loved ones. And so basically, we feed off positivity, or we generate positivity. We try to, and that's because we're survivors as well. I guess you would say that these malevolent kind of spirits are anti-survivors. Of course, they're incorporeal. They don't have physical bodies like we do, but they are survivors in a very, very different way than we are. They are very much parasites. very, very parasitic. And they're almost like a disease, very, very parasitic.
So, Keith, so something that Ron brought up, and you discussed a little bit here. What's sort of the end game? Like, you have these negative spirits, these demonic spirits, and it seems like they're always looking for an opportunity to sort of enter our dimension, maybe enter possessions, obviously, like way down the line. But like, what's the end goal? Like, is this like a continuation of a age old forever battle that's been going on? Is it just something negative that's trying to get a foothold? Like, what are your thoughts on why this is all happening?
I think it's well, it's kind of almost like a game going on, a big chess game in some ways between higher powers. And great example of that in the Bible is the book of Job. The book of Job, where Job is being tested by all these terrible things, and Satan says, I'll break him, and I'll cause him to curse God. And God says, well, you do what you want, just don't take his life. And he goes through these horrific things. And of course, Job himself knows nothing of this. He knows nothing of what's going on in the celestials. He's the victim. But I think it's a sign of the times too, because things are getting closer and closer and really winding up to a climax there, and end battle. And I think that some spirits are trying to generate as much negativity as they possibly can, and bring down as many people as they can. And it's a stalling tactic. It's a stalling tactic. I think they're trying to postpone the inevitable. Let's not have the end times till at least a few more centuries. I want to be on this plane as much as I possibly can. So I think it's a stalling tactic. It's a delay tactic, and they just want it to keep going on. And unfortunately, the nature of a very malevolent spirit, like a demon, is to destroy its host, like a disease. It's unfortunate. You would think that they'd just be content to get into somebody's body, and many times people have spirits in them that they don't realize for many years, decades. But most of the time, eventually, some tragedy is going to happen, or that person's going to really start to break down, even though you would think that defeats the purpose of a demon too. Yeah. It's if I can just quickly relate an old allegory, an old story of the scorpion that was on the back of a swan, and it wanted to go across the rivers. And so the swan, it says, I promise I won't sting you. I just want to ride. I just want to hitch a ride with you. So the swan says, yes, you can ride on my back. And they're almost at the edge. And just before they're at the edge of the stream or river, whatever, the body of water, the scorpion, of course, stings the swan. And as the swan's dying, it says, why did you do that? Now we're both doomed. You're going to drown and die along with me. Why did you do this? And the scorpion simply replies, it's what I do. And I think that's the attitude. That's the modus operandi of the demonic spirit.
Chaos for the sake of chaos, like just doing what they do, trying to wreck things from their end.
Yes, it's their nature. It's in their nature. There's no good in there. Of course, there's various levels of demonic spirits. There's the higher up and the generals, so to speak, and all the way down to the foot soldiers. And then you get back to the elementals and such to work with them.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think we use the term spiritual warfare very much anymore, but I think that's probably as close as it comes whenever you want to understand rationale and motive behind these things. The idea that there is a battle over this human plane of existence between two very different forces, one that's very benevolent and very caring, and the other one that's very malicious and very dark. And I think when we start looking at things in that respect, we can understand that we're kind of caught in the middle, and we're sometimes the collateral damage in this type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very true, and that's of course the story of Job. He's caught in the middle of all of this, and he's like a pawn. He doesn't understand any of this, and till at the end, God comes down and actually reveals what's going on, and that he's been watching over this. And interestingly, the book of Job is the oldest book in the Bible. It predates Genesis. It was just stuck after Genesis because Genesis is a beginning story, but it's actually the first biblical story ever written.
Wow. All right. I want to switch gears really quick for one thing, but buddy, my story for you would be: there's same river, but there's a blonde on one side and a blonde on the other. And the first blonde says to the other blonde, "How do I get to the other side?" And the second blonde says, "You're on the other side."
Nice.
All right. Sorry. It's like his beer. But let me ask
That's a good one.
So there's negative and there's positive. Now there's all that stuff that falls in between it. And Ron, when it comes to vampires, which I didn't really know that they actually existed. I kind of thought that was more like a, I don't know. I know that like the guy in the movie they claimed was a real one back in the black and white with no, what was his name? It was
Nosferatu.
Before him, Ghostferatu.
Shrek. Yeah.
So where do they fit in? Like I'm trying, like I'm literally through all these paranormal shows, I've been drawing like a chart of where I kind of think things fit. So kind of where do they? I'm being serious. Like, where does it all fall into place? Like the idea of a vampire. That's going to be an evil. What?
Yeah, well, that goes back many, many, many centuries. Of course, in China, there's the belief in the vampire under many names. Ancient China, ancient Europe, of course, early European history. It goes back many, many, many years. And often you find that that's how people dealt with diseases. They often had no cure for these diseases or explanations. They didn't understand that there was the tubercular germ and whatnot. So often they assigned this to a supernatural cause. And the way they dealt with these was to take action in a supernatural manner, which went to folklore. And that, of course, eventually came across the ocean along with the European settlers, and you get the New England vampires that were very, very prevalent, and nowhere was it more prevalent than in Rhode Island. Now Rhode Island, little Rhodey. We know of at least a few dozen cases. However, I'm sure there's many, many, probably hundreds that we don't know about, that people went out in their backyard and did this ritual to cleanse their sacred ground of the undead spirit. So, but that's where it probably originated, and we can trace it back to Europeans. Of course, a lot of people blame the natives. So this comes from the natives. That's what there's no record in the native lore of any of the tribes that really goes to this. So it's that's what they were the scapegoat, of course, like that. So
are we blaming the Italians? Because that's what it feels like right now. I kind of think it's like maybe the Italians. There's so many damn I'm fully Italian. All the damn Italians came flooding over all at once. We brought vampires.
Right.
I know
way before. Way before.
All right. Well, all right. This ain't European. I'm wondering.
It goes way before. However, in Italy, so from about a little over 500 years ago, a cemetery. Of course, there's a lot of cemeteries all over the world that we don't know about. One was being exhumed historically. They found out there was actual barrels here. One of the bodies was of a woman, and of course, she just skeletal remains. However, a brick had been lodged into her mouth, down her throat, presumably after death, presumably. And
she still didn't shut up. Sorry. Stop there. Sorry.
Mouth is wide open. The jaw is wide open. Yes, right. But presumably that's to keep her from biting people and attacking people. Just this brick down her throat, and that's supposed to prevent her from rising and taking nourishment from people's bodies.
Ron?
Well, if you go back into the anthropological record, we could even look at graves that extend from the Middle East, from around Israel, the whole way up into the British Isles, where there was a time, probably about 12,000 years ago, where there was at least a belief that these bodies were able to rise up, and we find different cult practices where these bodies are exhumed after death and their skulls are crushed. Almost all these instances are of men between the ages of 25 and 35 years old. So there was an idea, at least in cultures that spanned a very vast area, that the dead were able to rise and take its prey upon the living. Now, of course, we're going to assign them Judeo-Christian ideas, because that's a society in which we live.
Certainly.
We're living in a shamanistic society at that point. So the idea of good and evil was kind of thrown out the window. But let us just say that the idea of the dead being able to do very heinous things on the living is something that is ancient, that is in our genes. That's part of our belief system as human beings.
Certainly. That's and very, very well put, by the way. Exactly. And we often blame the dead for things that are happening in everyday life, and especially when there's no other explanation. And interestingly, the New England way to dispatch a vampire kind of differed in some ways from the European way. Of course, in Romania and such, and surrounding provinces, the way was to stake the vampire, like you see in the movies, of course, like that. Now, that originally was not to kill the vampire. It would not destroy the vampire. That's since the people believed the heart was where the soul rested. That's just to stake them down so they can't get up again. And they're trying to get up, but another way to at least prevent them was to put the headstone. And this happened a lot in New England in excavations that have been found. They put the headstone above the head of the deceased. That way they're going to keep bonking their head when they try to get up, and or simply because I guess vampires are not considered to be too smart in folklore, turn them upside down. So when they try to get out, they're digging their way just down further and further and further. So burials have been found that support these beliefs and such. One of the earliest ones we know about was in 1793 that took place in Manchester, Vermont. And that was Rachel Harris. And there was also Captain Isaac Burton and his daughter. And these were attended by sometimes well over 100 people. They'd have public exhumations and everything. But when you get it continuing like that, usually these were in small burial grounds that were part of the farm family, usually a farm family, agricultural. They would be part of their property, and they just go out to the backyard and disinter their relatives. You get into Rhode Island, and there was Stephen Staples and his daughter Abigail. Abigail is one of the first suspected vampires in Rhode Island, in Cumberland, Rhode Island. In 1796, she passed away at a young age. She was not married. And then almost immediately after, her sister became very sick. Her sister became with consumption. They called it consumption, any disease that would cause you to waste away. Mostly it was tuberculosis, pulmonary tuberculosis affected the lungs. But her sister began becoming very, very ill. And this is interesting because it's actually on the town documents that Stephen Staples went to the town council, came before them and petitioned them that he was would be allowed to, given permission to dig up his daughter Abigail and try an experiment, quote, try an experiment to see if he could stop the progressive illness of his other daughter. Jesus. And he was granted permission with this stipend that he give her a decent burial. He give Abigail a decent reburial once he had finished with his experiment. Now, we're not sure exactly what happened after that. Supposedly his other daughter did succumb to her disease, which was very frequent. But there's also a tale that I don't know how much, there's actually no proof for this, but it's supposed to be true that when Abigail Staples was exhumed, it was, I guess, in the early evening, he and a farmhand or a friend, Stephen Staples, opened up the coffin lid, and his friend, whatever they saw, he went screaming off into the night, running off into the night, whatever he saw in that coffin. But,
so Keith, a question on sort of this time period. So were they kind of looking to assign somebody as a vampire after they died, or do they build a backstory and say, well, Abigail was, the traditional like killing people and sucking their blood while she was alive, or is it because tuberculosis is a wasting disease and you're not particularly strong and mobile and everything? So do they build the story after the fact, or or is there anything to say these people were kind of doing things that were scary and suspicious before they died?
That's actually a very, very good point, and I'm glad you asked that, because it seems to be always after they died. After they died, they're looking for the culprit. Now, of course, there's modern retellings of these stories that took place in New England and especially Rhode Island, where like Sarah Tillinghast, there's stories where she liked to cut the heads off chickens, and she was very morbid and everything. No, none of that's true. That's all embellishments many years after the fact. These were very normal farm subsistence families, and who they began contracting a wasting disease. One after the other began to fall ill. So they would go to the local burial ground and start digging up the bodies. If they found an incorruptible, somebody who hadn't decayed properly, well, that's the husk. That's the host. And they believed differently than is portrayed in books and movies. What they believed was it was a spirit that was inhabiting the body and would come out at night and drink the life, not just the blood, but really absorb the life forces. That's why these people were wasting away. It was actually living on the life forces of the dead relatives, and that was causing them to waste away. And of course, with the case of the Tillinghast case in 1799, it was a family of 14, actually. Honor Tillinghast had given birth to 14 children, very, very healthy children. And then they all lived to adulthood meaning 12 years old and afterwards. That was considered adulthood at the time. And the eldest daughter that was not married and still living at home was supposedly a very lovely, beautiful woman with long, flowing blonde hair and bright sapphire blue eyes, very, very beautiful, very, very voluptuous. And her father was a very, very wealthy, prominent apple orchard farmer and peaches as well. And one night he had a dream, because people believed in dreams back then. They believed they meant something. He had a disturbing dream that half his orchard died and was decaying. He smelled the stench of decay, and half his orchard turned around. The other half was blooming like springtime. So he couldn't shake this dream, what it might mean. Shortly after that, Sarah, who was, very healthy, lovely farm girl of 22 years old, she became very, very ill. And the doctor diagnosed her with consumption. Of course, she had the galloping kind, meaning it was very, very progressive. And she died in only less than a month later. This healthy, vibrant, very healthy, strong woman died very rapidly. Within a couple of weeks, one of the other children became very pale and was having disturbing dreams, and told his parents that, I think my sister Sarah is coming to see me. She comes in my bedroom at night and she sits on my chest and makes it hurt. Now, of course, that can be psychologically. You've lost a sister, you've seen her die, and now you're getting sick. You equate that with your relative who's recently died. And so this child died very young too. And then another child got ill, and this time the father, of course, the mother was Honor Hopkins Tillinghast. The father was Stutley Tillinghast, sometimes pronounced Stukely, sometimes Stutley. But Stutley had a nickname, Snuffy. His nickname was Snuffy. And this is in Exeter, Rhode Island, 1799. Because of the snuff-colored jacket. He wore a snuff-colored jacket, so he had the nickname Snuffy. But finally, two children became very, very seriously ill, and they died soon afterwards, each of them complaining that Sarah's coming in the room. Now, then he starts wondering, are half of my children going to die? Is that what this dream meant, that half my orchard symbolizes half my family? And people really did believe in dreams. And then finally, his wife complained, his wife Honor complained that Sarah had been coming in the room at night. And she said, soon I'm going to join my sweet Sarah. That was it. Snuffy became wild. He was not going to lose his wife that had borne him 14 children. So he was going to do anything. He had a town meeting at the local farmer's grange, and they discussed the old superstition, whether this should be tried here. So it was in late in the year in 1799. He went to his local burial ground. And this is, you can still see this cemetery in Exeter, Rhode Island. It's historical cemetery number 14. Been there. Buddy's been there. Yep. On Forest Hill Drive. And you can see Honor Hopkins Tillinghast. She has her stone there. But there's some stones that are unmarked. And that's believed to be the children because they died in rapid succession. Somewhere Sarah is buried there. Probably one of the stones that does not have an inscription. So all the two children that had died, they exhumed them and they had gone pretty much back to the earth. It was Sarah who had been dead the longest. She'd been dead several months. She was, when they pried the lid off, she was like, they just jumped back in shock. She was perfectly preserved, or close to it anyway. She still had her long blonde hair. Her tongue was protruding in her mouth and her lips had turned up into a smile. Her bright blue eyes were wide open.
Oh,
and so also her fingernails had seemed to grow. Her hair had grown. Now, of course, forensics, we have explanations for this. Of course, the skin tends to dry and pull back, giving the appearance the nails have grown. And as the face starts to, dry and harden, the lips sometimes will be pulled back into a smile. The tongue will sometimes protrude, which is why in Europe they didn't believe vampires had fangs. They believed they had a stinger on their tongue, because often the bodies would the tongue would start to protrude. Weird. But they think that there's only one thing to do. They had to do the exorcism for the vampire. What they did, her father cut out her heart and burned it on a nearby rock, and scattered the ashes. And there was only one child that died after that. It was an unmarried child. Well, actually, there was one that was married, but living on another farm, died shortly afterwards. But since there are no more deaths for a while, they figured they'd done the right thing. And that's the tale of Sarah Tillinghast. And I actually, in one of my books, I wrote about it. And there's the cemetery where, I don't know if you can see that. There's the cemetery where the Tillinghast family's buried. And Sarah is one of these small stones that doesn't have an inscription.
So, Keith, this is kind of, I can tell Kev is probably thinking the same thing I'm thinking. So, we're from Rhode Island. First of all, I'm not shocked it was Cumberland. Of course it was. Second of all, we know a lot of Tillinghasts. And
very prominent.
The female Tillinghast that we know have long blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So they're all related. It's a very. I mean, they had 14 children. Most of them survived. So.
And the family that I know has about 6 kids or 7 kids, right? And the brothers are maniacs. One's a boxer out of Rhode Island. Like they're like very aggressive people, nice people, but very aggressive people. So it's like you're telling the story of the Tillinghast. I'm going, kind of know them. I kind of know some of those. You know?
Yeah, right. Well, ask them if they're related because there's probably a 90% chance they are.
So,
right, Kev?
So. Yeah, entirely right. Yeah, I was actually the same thing. The hair, the eyes, the same thing. Do you mind if I ask Ron a question?
Go right ahead.
So Ron, I asked you because your background. So the New England Vampire Panic. It was obviously after the Salem witch trials. It was obviously encompassed New England, Rhode Island, supposedly one of the epicenters of it. I guess from your perspective. I guess what are your thoughts on that period, that time period? What were people thinking? Because I know you have the kind of the folklore background, and you kind of hit things that way. So.
Right. Well, I mean, this is the age of reason that we're talking about. This isn't antiquity. Harvard University has already been in existence now by the time of Mercy Brown. for well over 200 years. Like I said last time I was on the show, the time of Mercy Brown, baseball was being played professionally for about 30 years. So this isn't like whenever this happened, this isn't like in the Dark Ages. What's going on though is whenever science cannot provide you with any cure or remedy to what is going on, the only option you have left is to look at the superstition. Look at the old ways. How was this handled in the old world? And science very soon scatters, and superstition and folklore takes its place, because if traditional science is not working, you have to go to something maybe a little bit more powerful than that.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, if it only goes to speak how far science has come, that was 1892, Mercy Brown, right? That was very not too long
1892. Ago. Late 1892.
In just over 100 years, it's tremendous.
Yeah,
it is very tremendous.
Coca-Cola was on the market.
No, yeah,
you had the telephone.
Right. So whenever we talk about the Middle Ages, we talk about the bubonic plague. Sure, it's a little bit easier to understand. They're personifying disease. It's the personification of plague. But my goodness, whenever we get to this particular period of time, and another thing that makes a complete point too, because I live in Western Pennsylvania, so we have close-knit towns, but they're nowhere as near as close-knit as you folks up in New England. So whenever families and things like that are still, active to this very day, I think that kind of feeds into it too, don't you think as well? If it kind of catches fire, and you try to extinguish that fire the best way that you know how. And one of the ways that they did it in the old world was what you exhumed the body, and obviously that's going to work here as well.
Exactly. Well, look at just recently the story of The Conjuring, in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Of course, it became a major motion picture, and Bathsheba Sherman was a real person, right? She was a farm woman and a prominent member of the local Baptist church, unlike what she's portrayed in the movie. But people would not leave that poor woman's stone alone. They would smash it. And isn't that trying to get rid of? They're trying to exorcise the evil they can't get to her body, but they're going to smash her headstone and desecrate the cemetery. That's the only way they know how to take action and deal with their fears.
Absolutely. Now, one other thing that's very curious about these vampire cases as well, too.
Yes.
The common denominator is still the female. Now, of course, you do have cases whenever there's men involved, but the Salem witch trials and that idea that women were somehow naturally corrupt or naturally susceptible to demonic forces still has not been exorcised 200 years after the Salem witch trials.
Yeah, very true. Very true. They're very biblical people. They believe Eve was tempted by the devil. Women are going to be susceptible. And I mean, there were exceptions, and those women usually suffered more for being more outgoing.
Sure. Sure.
So we blame women then, and we blame women now?
Oh, that's absolutely the case. Women have been blamed since we started to, set pen to paper. Even before that, before we started to set, a wedge-shaped object to clay cylinders. Women have always been the scapegoat for men, because we are far more superior than they are. So then they become creatures of darkness. They become the temptress. They're the ones that are leading us away from the light. They are the mermaids that are singing us into the rocks, right? So these are all archetypal symbols that, whether we know it or not, are implicit within our daily life and the way we view the world. And even though we might be puritanically Christian, we still come with the idea that women are bad and they're capable of doing demonic things.
Ron, question for you. Are you going to talk paranormal, or are we just going to talk common sense here? Because I agree with you.
But don't you think, and I think that all of you will agree, it blurs the line. I mean, think about that kind of stuff. Whenever the normal becomes paranormal, then we really are, we become archaeologists instead of some sort of ghost hunters. And that's the way I like to look at myself. I'm sure Mr. Johnson likes to look at himself that way as well, too. All of these cases are situated in a particular time and place.
Right.
Yes.
In order to understand what was going on, we have to peel back those layers of the onion to get to the heart of what's going on. No pun intended, or maybe intended. So really, I mean, we are investigating something that may seem paranormal, out of the ordinary to regular people. But if you were going back to this particular time and place, this was the most normal thing that could be going on.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And Mercy Brown, the unfortunate thing, she died at age 19 years old and of, tuberculosis. And she died in the wintertime. She died in January 1892. So 2 months later, when she's exhumed, there she is, frozen. So, look, she's the vampire. Look at it. She's perfectly preserved, And they even had the county coroner there overseeing it. And he said there's nothing unusual with her state of decomposition. And she died of tuberculosis. He had treated her in her last stages. But the people insisted, no, she's perfectly preserved. They cut out her heart and liver, which dripped a little bit of blood because it probably just defrosted, and burned it on a nearby rock, fed the ashes to her brother who had tuberculosis. They mixed it in a tonic, and he drank his sister's ashes of her heart and liver. Supposedly they're going to counteract the disease of vampirism that way. And unfortunately it didn't work. He died less than 2 months later in his early 20s. But they figured, well, we did the right thing. So that stopped it.
Yeah, so the idea of the blood still being present, her body being in such a state of preservation, we know how bad the winter was at that particular season, because in that exact same year, it was too bad for children to go outside and play sports. So that very year, basketball was invented outside of Boston because you could play inside. So we know, putting all these kind of things together, we can see how a body could be preserved in a very, almost like a flash frozen type of situation. And of course there's going to be blood because all what's going on is defrosting, like you had said.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good point. Excellent point.
I have a question for you, Keith, really quick. There's a lot of, as a Rhode Islander, as someone who's been to Mercy Brown's grave a number of times, there's a lot of spiritual activity that happens in and around the cemetery. Some say that it's the negativity caused by digging up the grave and desecrating the body. Some say it's the legend that people were died and didn't really die, and they put them out in the crypts and they froze to death. Some say it's all the energy that has been brought to the location, just looking for a vampire. That all that. What are your thoughts?
I think it's been a lot of negative energy introduced because of people's belief in the folklore, and because people have come in and tried to summon Mercy Brown, and I think that's done a lot to bring negative energy in. And even Nellie Vaughan in West Greenwich, Rhode Island. So she was not even suspected to be a vampire. It's many years afterwards that supposedly these high school students in 1967 were looking for Mercy Brown. They went to the wrong cemetery. Right. They found Nellie Vaughan, whose headstone says, "I am waiting and watching for you." Right.
Although that is a creepy cemetery. I know exactly where that cemetery is. I've been to that one many times.
Oh, yeah.
It's out in the middle of a lot of Tillinghast out there. Tillinghast.
Yes. And by the way, Mercy Brown's family were directly related to the Tillinghasts. So I guess it's in the blood, so to speak.
Small world.
Yeah, exactly. Small state. Yeah. Right. Rhode Island's a small world unto itself.
It really, really is. Rhode Island. Rhode Island is such a weird place. It's such a weird. It's always been a weird thing. And like you said about the towns, the families, the mayor. You know what I'm trying to say? Growing up, know the mayor. You've had drinks with the mayor. You know what I mean? Exactly. It's just weird. It's just everybody knows each other. It's getting different, a little bit different now, but it's always been like that. And we've always had Italian grandmas that had all kinds of stories that we didn't believe, but they would tell you all these different things. You didn't go here for this. Don't do this for there. Wear the malork, or go like this when you think someone's giving you, trying to put a curse on you. Wear the horn. Right. I wore all these jewelry. I had St. Michael, St. Anthony. If I lost something, like our grandmas had us, like our nanas had us like prepared. Like they there was always a sense of like weird, like beyond like normal stuff, paranormal stuff that nanas would talk about.
And the scent of garlic too. Garlic's supposed to be very, ward off evil, and it's it actually wards off germs too. It's very medicinal.
We were covered there. I think we were definitely covered there.
Yes.
Buddy, anything?
To close up, thank you, Keith. This has been this hour's like skipped by like nothing, man. I can talk to you for another hour or two.
We'll do it again.
Ron, thanks for coming on and adding to your questions are like so deep and sensational. I could listen to you guys just go back and forth forever. Next week, tune into Legit Paranormal. We have Bill Reap from Northeastern Pennsylvania. Nice. Bill has been investigating the paranormal longer than the three of us have been alive, so it should be an interesting show.
Kev?
No, Keith, thank you for coming on. Ron, thanks for coming on. Also, Keith, I had a couple of other very big questions for you, so we have to have you back. I have like a lot of like deeper stuff that I wanted to get into. So hopefully you had a good time. Hopefully you'll come back. And the last thing I want to thank Chris Faro of Greater Western Paranormal Association for having us on the Salem last night. That was a great time, buddy. Thank you for all your crew, Ocean State Paranormal, for kind of dealing with us and walking us all around and everything. Very good time. So thank you to both of those groups.
We had a great time.
Yeah. All right. So, Ron, first off, thank you for being someone else to come on the show and ask intelligent questions.
Hey guys, I'm flattered anytime you guys ask me on the show, and it was a pleasure, Mr. Johnson, finally getting the chance to talk with you in the same room as well.
Oh, thank you very much. A pleasure to speak with you as well.
And Keith, you can tell that you're the type of person that I would want to just hear stories from. Like, I just love hearing stories. I think my favorite thing. I think that's what connects us to, like, and it's weird that you're kind of saying vampires created basketball in a weird sort of way, right?
It is.
Well, because we're from the sports.
That's good. That's good info. Very good.
We're from the sports world. That's literally where we're from. That's just how we talk. So we like hearing stories, and nothing's better than like the paranormal stories, because you never know where they're going to go. I have no idea of the whole realm of it, but both of you, like, it's just incredible to hear you guys talk about what it is that's going on. But so can I say that now? Vampire side of basketball? Can I run with that, Ron?
How about the Providence Vampires? Wouldn't that be a great name for a basketball team?
The North Providence Vampires?
Sure.
Great. That sounds cool.
I ran the summer league basketball for the last 2 years. I could have named one of the teams the Vampires. We could have had like the Grave Diggers. We could have had like the Zoomers, and then one other team.
How about we get a microbrewery to put together the Rhode Island Vampire?
I'm sold. I'm there. Microbrewery.
There we are.
What are you gonna say?
The bear that bites back. There we go, guys. We're in business. All right. So, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope to have both of you back. So I'm going to wrap it up for the Genius Kev, for Buddy, for Keith Johnson, for Ronald Murphy. This is me, Mike Lepre, King Mike L. This is Legit Paranormal from legitpodcast.com. Thank you, and we'll see you next Sunday.